Hi guys, and welcome to this Unity tutorial on animation controllers. So we've added in a soldier, which is going to be our main character, our third person controller, and so we're going to need to add some animations to him and some controls as well, so that's what we'll be doing today. So in the if you come over to characters and then double click on soldier, we've got two folders there. We've got animations and models. In the animation folder we've got these animations that we've downloaded from Mixamo. So we've got soldier idle, soldier jump, soldier run and soldier shoot. So what we're going to be doing is adding all of these onto our model and controlling them through the animator controller. So if you just select the soldier in the hierarchy, and in the inspector you'll see this animator component window, and underneath it you'll see a box saying controller, and currently we don't have a controller on it, so we're going to need to create one. So just make sure you're in your animation folder in your assets, and then right click in that, go to the create menu and go to animator controller, and that's created a controller for us. So we're just going to name that soldier AC and hit enter. And then if we come back to our soldier, now what we're going to do is we're going to take this soldier AC controller and we're just going to drag it into our animator controller box, and then we're going to double click on that, which will open up our new animator tab, and this is where we're going to be adding in all of our animations. So let's just drag over the soldier idle animation and just drop it into that window, and that's created our first animation. So if we press play, let's just see what happens with that. So you can see here that when we press play we got this blue progress bar that went across, and currently it's just playing it once, and you can see this because it's got to the end and it's stopped and our character has stopped moving. So we want this to repeat, we don't want it just to play through once. So if we just come out of play mode and we go click on our soldier idle animation in our animator folder, if we come down just underneath this time bar here, we'll see loop time. So we want to check that, and we also want to make sure we check loop pose as well, so just make sure both of those are checked. So once we've applied those, just want to scroll to the bottom and make sure you click this apply button at the bottom of the inspector window. So that's applied these changes now to this animation. So if we just come back over and if we press play again, you should be able to see that this progress bar will now loop when it gets to the end, and you can see that it's doing that. And in your game window you can see that the animation is looping and he's continuously moving, which is exactly what we want, which is great. So it's going to come out of play mode and we're going to add in the jump. So just go over to your animations folder again and just drag in the jump. So currently these aren't connected, so there's not going to be anything linking these two together. So to do that we need to create a transition. So if you see from here you can see this line going across. So this entry is when you start playing the game, and that's the state that it's going to transfer to. Now we need to make a transference between these two states. So if we hover over our soldier idle and right click, and then we can come down to this make transition, and then you can see we get this bar that drags out, line that drags out, and we can just drag that on and then click soldier jump, and then if we go to play now it should cycle through both of these animations. So there's the idle, and there you can see it went to the jump, but once again the jump has not been looped, so that's just stopping at that animation, and then that whole transition point is stopped at that point because it's not telling it to go anywhere else. So if we just come back out of play mode, So we've got our soldier idle, we've got our soldier jump, and now we're just going to add in soldier run. So just drag soldier run over and drop that in, and we're going to create another transition to go from jump into run. So make transition and drag it down onto soldier run. So let's just see what this looks like. So we've got our idle playing, then it goes into jump and it starts running. And run currently is also not looped, so if we wanted it to run continuously we'd need to change that. So if we just select our soldier run animation in our animation folder and do the same that we did with the idle, loop time and loop pose, and then we need to remember to scroll down and click apply, and then we can see now that what should happen is it should go from idle, a jump, and then continuously run. So let's just make sure we've done everything correctly. So idle, jump, and now it's looping the run. So that's great. But now we need to set some parameters on these animations because we want to be able to control them with our actual controls on our PC rather than just having a run-through state. What we need to do is we need to make these animations controllable by our keyboard controls or another controller, and we're going to do that via scripting. But first we need to make sure that we have our parameters set so that they can be called within the script that you'll be writing in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how to set up the parameters within the animation controller for each different animation. So first things first is we're going to just tidy this up a little bit so we can see what we're doing, because we're going to be adding some other transitions. So I'm just going to zoom out using the middle mouse wheel, and I'm going to move this run up to here. I'm just going to move the jump over a bit so you've got nice triangles so that it can cycle between these, and you can easily see the transitions that we'll be putting in a minute. So what we need to do is we need to add a parameter on this transition. So to add a parameter, if you have a look on this side menu here, you can see that this says parameters. All you need to do is click this plus icon and you'll have various different options of different triggers and that you can put on. So for this one we just need to add a trigger. So we're just going to click on trigger and it's automatically brought that up for us. So we're going to name this. Now the naming is quite important because if you don't get this right and you misspell it and then you don't quote it correctly in your script, then it won't work. So we're going to call this is jumping. So is lowercase and then jumping, you want it to start with a capital J. So is jumping. Is jumping. And then that's your transition created, parameter created, sorry. So we've created our parameter over here, but now we need to actually apply it to this animation. So if you select the animation and you come over, so sorry, if you select your transition, so the transition between the two states, so if you make sure your transition is selected, if you come over into your inspector you can see your transition state, and you can see down here you've got a box that says conditions, and this is where you add your parameters. So at the moment we don't have anything added, so if we just click on the add button you can see it's automatically put in is jumping for us because currently that's the only parameter we have set in there. So at the moment we have this has exit time box checked. Now what this means is that if we play this, then it will wait until the animation has finished before allowing this transition to interrupt it. So we don't want that to happen, so we want to make sure that is unchecked, so that when we press our jump button, it will automatically jump. It will automatically cut this animation off and go to the jump animation. Okay, so to test this to see if this trigger is working, we are going to need to put in some code. So to do that, we're going to need to create a script. So if you come over into your project window and click on the soldier and then right click in that box, and we go to create and C# script, and that will create a new script for us. So we're going to name that script soldier controls with a capital S and a capital C, and we're just going to hit enter. And now we're going to open that script and we're going to add in some code. So double click to open it, and it should open in MonoDevelop, which is Unity's default script viewer. And I'm just going to get rid of that extra script. So this is our new script, soldier controls, and so what we're going to do is I'm just going to paste in the script and I'm going to talk you through it. So this is the script for our controls, which is just going to trigger our jump. So what we've got here is, this is the name of our script, so this is the script that's going to be used every time that this script is called. So this, if you change your script name, make sure that you change it here as well, because this, if this changes and you don't change it in your project files, then it will completely mess up. It won't know where it's meant to be calling. So this is just going to call the animator, so this is where it calls the component. So if we just minimize this and go back into our soldier, that's not the right one, that's the right one. So this is just calling the component from here. So anim get component animator, so it's just telling the script what component it needs to be looking at. And then here you can see it's saying get button down, so when the button is pressed for jump, which is default set to spacebar, when that is pressed, it will set this trigger and run these parameters against our animation and the button. So you can change the jump button if you want. So if you wanted to change that, if you go to edit and project settings and go to input, bring up your input menu here, and you can see you've got various different options to change. So if you have a look at jump, you can see positive button is set to spacebar, so when we press space, that will make this transition occur. So let's just bring up our script again, and we're just going to save that. So file, save, and our script is now saved. And now what we need to do is we need to add this script onto our soldier, because currently it's not assigned to anything. So oops, if we just select soldier, bring it up in the inspector. So all we need to do then is go to our script, our soldier controller script, and just drag it on to our soldier in the inspector, and now you can see that that has been applied to our soldier. So now if we press play, it should work. So we're idle and we're jumping, and it goes straight into the run. Okay, so we've got our soldier jumping, but after it jumps we don't want it to go to run, we want it to go back to being idle. So we need to delete this transition. So if we just click on this, and then if we come over to the inspector window, we can just click that minus button and it takes that transition out. So what we want is, after we finish jumping, we want it to return to its idle animation state. So if we just highlight soldier jump and right click, make transition, and then just put it back to idle. Now this doesn't need any triggers on it. It's just as soon as that has finished, we want it to go back to idle. So let's just check that this is working. So we're in idle and we're jumping and we're back to idle, and you can see it's just repeating idle until we press the space bar, which is the trigger, which is calling the code that we just wrote. So that's brilliant. Okay, so now we're going to do the transition between the idle and the run state, and to make this work we need to add in some more code. So I'm just going to go back to our soldier controller script and open that up. There it is. Okay, so we've already added in the extra bit of script for you here. So this is the section that we've added in, and these two lines of script here are controlling your sort of up down arrows and your left and right arrows. So it's the vertical and horizontal inputs, same as your jump key here. So if you went to, let's put this back over here for a sec, if you went to your input, so edit, project settings, and then input, and you can see that you've got horizontal and vertical here. So you can see you've got horizontal, you've got left and right arrows, and then vertical you've got up and down. So that's what those are calling in that script. So let's bring the script back in. And then this part of the script is basically just saying that it's going to move your object, so whatever the script is attached to, so our soldier in this case, it's going to move it along the z-axis, which is the forward facing axis of the character, and then this is just saying that it will also rotate it along the same axis as well. And then up here you can see we've added in a public float for speed and a public float for rotation. So these you will actually be able to see in your inspector when we run this code, and then you'll be able to change these values. So you'll be able to change the speed of the walking and the speed of the turning using these numbers that will be seen in your inspector window. So let's just save that. So I've already saved it, so that's fine. So that script is now attached. Okay, so we've added in that script, so if we press play, you should be able to see that working. So you can see I'm moving forward, backwards, and I can turn my character, which is wonderful. But currently we haven't got any animations set for when these buttons are pressed. So that's what we're going to be doing next. So let's come out of play mode. So what we're going to need to do is create a transition between the idle state and the soldier run state. So we're not going to use a trigger for that, we're going to use a bool. So if you click on your plus, come down, you'll see bool. So we're going to add that in, and we're going to call that is running. So is running, same as is jumping, is lowercase, and running with a capital R. So we've created that. So now we're going to make the transitions between our two states. So just click on your state and drag over the transition, and then do the opposite. So we've got one going to and the one coming from. So then if we just click on our idle to running transition, and we need to add in this is running parameter to our conditions. So click on your plus button and select is running, and now you can see that we've got two options. We can set it as true or as false. So what we want to do is, if we're running, so if it's true, we want it to go to the running animation, so we want that to be set as true. And then if we click on our other transition and we add in again is running, so if we stop running we want to go back to being idle, so we want to set this as being false. And so just make sure you've got the one coming from run into idle as false, and the one coming from idle into run as true. Okay, so we've now got our character moving and we've set up our transitions between these two. So now we need to add in an extra little bit of code just to make sure that the script knows that it's calling this Boolean trigger, so that it will actually transition between these two animations. Also, another thing is we don't want these to play all the way through like before, so we want to be able to interrupt these animations when we take our finger off the button. So just make sure you untick has exit time. So just untick has exit time on the transitions. So just make sure on both transitions that you don't have that ticked. And then we're going to just hop back into the script, so just bring up your script. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to paste this code in. So what this is doing is we have our movement script up here, and this is saying, this part of the script here is basically saying that if the translation, so if the movement is not equal to 0, which is called from here, then what you want to do is you want to call this this is running Boolean trigger, and if that isn't happening then we want to turn that trigger off. So just make sure you save your script, and let's just have a look at that. So now you can see we're running. If we stop running, it stops running, and then we can turn, we can run backwards, and we've still got our jump in there as well. So, but at the moment, yep, no, it's working fine. So all of our animations can be interrupted. Okay, so at the moment we've got it set so we have these transitioning nicely between each other, but currently our jump is still going back to idle, so before we jump it will be sent back to idle before we can do anything else. So we need to create a transition between the run and the jump state. So I'm just going to click on the run state, make transition, and put it into jump. And we want to set that transition the same as the idle one, so we want that to be the is jumping trigger. So just click and it automatically puts in the is jumping trigger, which is great. And then we're just going to reverse the transition, so make transition, put it back into the run. And then for this one we want to use the is running bool, and we want to leave that as true. So all this is saying is that if you're running along and you jump, it's going to go back to run. So if you were holding down run and you did a running jump, it's going to go back to the run animation rather than going back to the idle animation. So let's have a look at that. So here we are in the idle state, and then we are running, which you can see there, which is great. If we stop, it goes back to the idle, and if we jump, it goes back to the idle. But if we run and jump, then that will keep going back to the run, although we do have a little bit of lag. Now is that because I have these exit times on here? So what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to run, and we want that jump animation to finish before it goes back to run. So if you look at your transition, we want to keep has exit time checked on the transition going from jump to run, and the other way around we can take that checkbox off. So if you've noticed, there's a little bit of a hiccup in the script when we're running. So we're running and we jump, and you can see, let's do that again. If you watch this transition up here, so I'm running and I jump, and you can see it sends it back to the idle state before going to the run state. So we can clean that up in the script just by adding another couple of lines. Okay, so just come back into your script. There we go. And then we're just going to add another 2 lines of code. So I'm just going to add one under here. So we're going to need to create this bool. So this is the same as is running, but it's called is idle. So basically it's going to mean that if it's not idle, then it's going to be running. So, and then we're just going to add in the opposite under this one, and then we're just going to save that. So we've got is running true, is idle false, and then we've got is running false and is idle true. And then we're going to add in the bool. So go up to your parameters, plus button, down to bool. So we're just going to name this is idle. So then we need to add this onto our jump to idle parameters. So if we select our jump to idle and come down and add in is idle, and we want to set that one to true. Okay, so now if we play, we should see that we haven't got that little return to idle after we've jumped from running. So let's just give that a go. So we're running and we're jumping and we're still running. We can turn around, still in the idle animation, and we can jump. So that means all of our script is working. Okay, so that is all our animations added. We haven't added the shoot state, but we'll do that in a separate video because that involves a lot more coding.